Hey guys, Joe here at ECRM's Wine, Beer, and Spirit session in New Orleans. I'm sporting my beads for the occasion, and I'm here with Caitlyn Battaglia from Nielsen, who gave a great presentation yesterday on trends in the categories. And so thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
So you covered a lot of stuff, and in fact, I have a bunch of notes of points that I wanted to discuss, but we're going to touch on three specific ones here. And what I'd like to open with is, your conversation about the blurring lines, the disappearing lines among drinkers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when we think back to the way that we've historically talked, particularly about alcohol drinkers, beverage alcohol drinkers, but even just beverage drinkers in general. If you think about, you always have that one friend who only drinks Diet Coke, or you have the friend who was always a beer drinker and never drank cocktails and never drank wine. When today we're seeing a lot more of that blending, and it's not unusual in a single occasion for people to start the meal with a glass, with the beer, move to a glass of wine with dinner, and finish off with a cocktail. And so we're starting to see, instead of beer drinkers, wine drinkers, even Diet Coke drinkers, you're starting to see these people just venture out, and it's really just a mix of different kinds of beverages and a lot of promiscuity, blurring, whatever words you want to use. And we're just starting to see a lot more blurring in what people are drinking, but then also in the way that the industry is then responding to that in the products that they're putting out into the world.
Gotcha, and I'm a case study of that, a perfect example, because I may start off with a beer, and then as the night progresses, I don't. The beer will be with the meal, and then as the night progresses, I maybe don't want all of those carbs or that full feeling. I'll switch to a vodka soda or maybe something a little bit lighter. So I go back and forth, and a lot of it is wellness related. Avoiding the carbs, I'll have a vodka soda. It's a lot less carbs. So, and that's another topic that you addressed was wellness.
Wellness is definitely starting to have an impact on the beverage alcohol space. Specifically, it has a broader impact across the grocery store as well. But within beverage alcohol, we're seeing the evolution of what I like to call mindful drinking. And so it's really a new decision-making process that consumers are employing, and it's really tied to this fact that a really large percentage of the American population is trying to opt for a healthier lifestyle, particularly among that 21 to 34-year-old group. So it's really being led by this younger generation. And what they're doing is, it could be everything from your example is great of being mindful of the carbs and making a decision whether it's kind of tapping into some of the domestic super premium products in beer that are really touting that functionality and kind of hitting your marks when it comes to nutritional goals, or at the opposite end, they're opting for just lighter, more mindful cocktails or wines or whatever it might be. We're seeing that really start to impact the way that consumers are interacting with their drinks, but that's not to say that they're always opting for that healthier option. It might be, I've decided that I want to cut back a little bit on my drinking, and so when I do, I want the product to be, it's almost like the embodiment of the experience economy in your like glass.
Gotcha.
So I really love 9%, IPAs. I only want to have one, but I'm still going to go for that 9% IPA. It's not necessarily I'm going to opt for a sessionable, a light drinking. I might just be making my decisions a little bit differently than I would have before.
So it's not just what they're choosing, but how they're drinking
and
as well.
These great, and we're even seeing the rise of non-alcoholic products altogether. Sober curiosity is definitely a topic that we're starting to see come up. So there's just a lot of dialogue and a lot of interest in being a little bit more mindful about the choices that you're making when it comes to your beverages.
And yesterday I hosted a store tour, and one thing that I noticed in the grocery stores was the prevalence of ready-to-drink alcoholic beverages, be they cocktails or wine in a can or, in a bottle. And you mentioned that was a big trend as well.
And I think this is just, it does a great job of tying back to that idea of those blurring categories, but this time instead of from the consumer side, earlier we were talking about, how in an evening you might try a couple different categories. Now we're seeing the adaptation of that from the product side as well. So the ready-to-drink space is such a great example of the blurring categories, because realistically consumers don't necessarily care if it's a spirit-based or a wine-based or a malt or sucrose-based product. it's more what it's offering as a product. So you mentioned a lot of cans. Cans can go a lot of places that glass can't. They can go to pools, they can go to beaches. It's easier for tailgating, it's easier to bring to parties. Cans just bring convenience to the play. And so we're seeing cans growing across multiple categories. Beer's always kind of played well in cans, but you see cider, you see wine, you see cocktails. And then it just really comes down to this idea of the flavor. Again, that mindful drinking. What are people really intentionally choosing? You could have products that, like you said, in one grocery store, you could have a shelf that has some spirits-based products, some wine-based products, and some, hard seltzer, sucrose-based products that realistically they represent beer, wine, and spirits, but they all fit really nicely on the same shelf, and that's just a great visualization and representation of where we're seeing beverage alcohol start to evolve.
And that's what I saw, exactly. It was a shelf, one section, and they were all right there together. And I think there's also, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a kind of like coolness factor with these beverages in a can. You see them really nicely designed and different flavors together. So are you seeing that as well?
We are. I agree with you that some of them just have really sweet, just nifty designs in terms of the products, and we're seeing. I'm an old school cocktail girl, and I really love that I can go and I can find a French 75 in a can, which who would have thought before that you would be able to find it? And it's bringing what consumers want where they want it, and so you talk about the on-premise and how you see this evolution and this really great kind of crafted cocktail culture. It's now starting to find its way to off-premise in these really appealing, visually attractive products that definitely match. It's a fun thing it's almost like a fun accessory to carry around, because they really are. They're a great topic of conversation, and they really are a large range of offerings as well.
Yeah, really cool stuff. And as I mentioned, there's a ton of information in this presentation. We're going to share the slide deck with everybody. So for those of you watching this, if you want to get a copy of it, just let me know in the comments or reach out to me, and then we'll be sharing this with everybody down the road. So thanks again for the great presentation, and enjoy the rest of your time in New Orleans.
Thank you. I hope you get a couple more beads before
Oh, yeah, I'm sure I'll have a neck full by the time we're done. So, thanks again.
No problem.
All right.